Hello, everyone. Happy Monday. How's everyone doing today? If you've never met me before, my name is Debra Lee Smith, as it says right there. There you go, right there. Go ahead and give me a hello in the comments. Let me know where you're tuning in from today. I am in Los Angeles, which is where I live. So it's really lovely to be with you guys today. If you've never met me before, hi, it's really wonderful to meet you. As it says, my name is Debra Lee Smith. I'm an actor, a filmmaker, and a mental health advocate. Hello, Vicky from the East Coast. Thank you for joining me today. Oh, your puppies look so cute. I don't know if you can see, my dog is like right in here, right over there in the corner. Dawn, not good. You're struggling with lockdown. It's impacting my mental health. Absolutely, Dawn. Thank you for sharing that, and thank you for joining us today. That is certainly something that we can dive into. I think that's something that is affecting all of us, especially if you're in the US. Hello, Michelle from Sydney. Hello, Diana from New Zealand. Lucky you. I assume that's New Zealand. Laurel, hello from Florida. Hi, everyone. It's really wonderful to have you guys here today. Hello, Dawn from England. So you are back in lockdown. Because you guys were sort of free for a little while, and now you guys are in lockdown again. I have to say, as I said, I'm in Los Angeles, and I've pretty much been in lockdown for 10 months now. I haven't really changed my mentality around any of this. So it's definitely wearing on me for sure. Hello, Angela from Portland, Kenny from the UK, and Karen also from the UK. And then we've got some regulars. Hi, Leslie. Wonderful to see you again. And hi, Melissa. Wonderful to see you again as well. So let's dive in, shall we? So thank you, everyone, again, for sharing your comments. As I say every week, I will, address these comments as we go. I always love communicating with you guys. I come on here every other week to talk with you guys at 1 o'clock. So my next talk will be the 25th of January at 1 p.m. And so I hope that you guys can join me again then. Sorry if you guys can hear my dog barking in the background. So if you've never met me before, hi, it's so wonderful to meet you. My name is Debra Lee Smith. I'm an actor, a filmmaker, and a mental health advocate. My organization, More Than You See, is an organization built around providing non-traditional resources to people just like us who are struggling through difficult times. Sorry, guys. My dog is very vocal today. And I actually have some really exciting news today. So I just launched a new podcast today for More Than You See. I would absolutely love if you guys checked it out and were interested in listening to it and potentially subscribing if that's something that you are interested in. The Mighty is going to put that link in the comments so you guys can check it out. And the podcast is basically what the reason behind the podcast and the reason that I created More Than You See is that I went through some, really, really dark stuff a couple years ago. And in going through that, I realized that, sorry guys, my dog is very vocal today. Finn, come here. He'll come and say hi. Here guys, you guys can meet my dog. Okay. He just really wanted to be a part of the conversation today. I created More Than You See a couple years ago when I was going through a really dark time. And I realized that the thing that really pulled me out of the darkness was some non-traditional resources. I listened to this podcast, and listening to this podcast, really helped me feel less alone. And so I realized the importance of books, podcasts, TED Talks, videos, other things that can bring people hope and can, pull people out of the darkness. And so I have created this podcast as a way to greet you guys every Monday. It will be a short little podcast every Monday, about 10, 15 minutes long. And it's just going to be a positive, warm way to start your week. This week, I talk about how mental health is actually, there's a whole bunch of different aspects to mental health that sometimes people think that it's just like you fix one thing and then you're cured in some way. And that's 100% not the case. There's a lot of different aspects to mental health, and that's what I talk about on this first episode. So check it out if you guys would like to. Okay, so let's get to the important stuff here. Again, thank you so much to everyone who is commenting and sharing their stories with us. And let's talk about this today. So, okay, there's a lot of people today who have commented about how much the lockdown is affecting everyone. And I think that it's really important to, recognize that, this lockdown is something that unfortunately is affecting all of us, and it's affecting our mental health in such a huge, huge way. And I want to, going back to my podcast and what I talked about on this first episode today, one of the things that I think that we have to look at when we look at those, when we look at how the lockdown is affecting us so much, is the fact that, it's not just that we are inside our homes, we aren't able to, see people. It's not just that. There's more going on, and I really want to talk about that because I think that that's really important at least for me. I find that whenever I, really dive into the reason behind the way I'm feeling some way, it makes me feel better. And that's, really what I want to talk about. So let's think about when we're in lockdown. So when we're in lockdown, we are seeing this. If you are living with someone, you're seeing the same people day after day. There's no change in that. If you are living alone, like I do with my dog, I'm not seeing anyone every day. And that is very lonely and can, cause a whole other, myriad of just depression and sadness. The fact that I, live by myself, that of course is really hard in a lockdown. I also think that, there's so much going on outside as far as the news that we are being fed or the news that we aren't being fed. It's really difficult to figure out exactly what we should be following, what we shouldn't be following, what is, actually going to, work with us and what isn't. And so I think that is also something to be, really focus on. So let's talk about some ways. Tamarin asks, how can we connect with different people on lockdown, set up Zoom groups? So let's talk about that. First of all, Zoom, absolutely amazing. That's definitely a great, thing that has become such a huge tool that we have access to in lockdown, is connecting with people through Zoom. I would also like to say, you can also think outside the box, because there's other things that we can do to connect with people, in similar ways. So for example, every morning, I have a very semi-strict morning routine that I do. And that really helps, having that schedule really helps make me feel better, because, it feels like I have some control over something in something going on in my life right now. And for me, that's my morning routine. And one of the things that's a really awesome part of my morning routine is that I do yoga with a friend who lives in Canada. My best friend lives in Canada. And we do yoga together every morning through an app called Fit On. It's just like Fit, FIT-ON, Fit On. And it's an app where it's an exercise app. But the really cool thing is that it also FaceTimes you with whoever you're exercising with at the same time. So my friend and I will have every morning at 7:30, we have a check-in with each other about how we're doing, and we do, this exercise together, which I think is really, really wonderful. Of course, there's all sorts of other ways to do, connect with people, maybe do Netflix parties or any of those sorts of things. There's all sorts of different, ways that we can connect with people. So think, maybe that there's, there's other things that you can do besides just connecting to people through Zoom. But I would also like to say that, like, if you are struggling and you are feeling alone, number one, you aren't alone. That is why, so that's the app, Fit On. Really, really cool app. I strongly recommend if you've got someone who you want to do a workout, or like they've got great stretch classes, they've got dance classes, there's all sorts of really cool stuff on there. But the other thing that I would say is that, it's also really, it's really okay that you're feeling alone. It's really okay for you to express that and for you to share that. And I think that, that is where the Mighty is so incredible. That is where, my organization and myself, like, I love connecting with people and interacting with people. And so if you are feeling, sad, there is people out there who care about you. The Mighty has also, of course, put the National Suicide Prevention Hotline in the chat. So if you are feeling alone or you're feeling suicidal, please call that hotline, because that is, something, of course, it's really important to get yourself support where you need it. So Melissa asks, are the Fit On classes free? They aren't. They do have a free trial, I think, but it's pretty cheap. I think it's like $8 a month or something like that for the app. And they've got a lot of incredible classes. And that additional feature of being able to like work out with someone is just part of the app. So like I have found that is like an investment that I absolutely want. And like, that is something that it hugely improves my mental health to like see my best friend every morning and check in with her, see how she's doing and all of that sort of stuff. So yeah, we've got a lot of really incredible comments here. And again, thank you so much for everyone who is sharing their stories. So obviously, not just Zoom, not just the Mighty, not just thinking outside the box as far as like Fit On and, doing Netflix parties and all of that sort of stuff. I mean, honestly, I think that there's, the longer that the lockdown goes on, the more that people are thinking outside the box and thinking of cool ways to connect with each other. I mean, for example, is there like, if you're someone who really loves, drawing or painting or something like that, is there something where I'm coming up with this idea completely randomly, but just bear with me. So for example, like I also love to paint. That's something that I really enjoy doing. And so for example, you could do something like paint a painting or paint half of a picture and then send it to a friend and have them continue it. And then they could send it on to another friend and then they could continue it. Or, go back to like old just letter writing. Like lately I've been making these cards and it's just like from the desk of my name. And I've been sending, I like have a list of people who I am constantly checking in with, and I just like am sending them letters, like good old-fashioned letters, because I think that right now having any sort of out of the box thinking as far as it comes to connecting with people is really cool and really important. Jenny says, I live alone. I open a Facebook room most evenings for my friends to drop in on if they want company. Also do weekly craft nights with a bunch of friends over Zoom. That's so cool, Jenny. And I just also realized the Facebook room feature, which is really awesome. And basically, excuse me, or please correct me if I'm wrong, Jenny, because I haven't actually tried it yet. But the idea behind it is that you can go on and you just like leave a space open, and then your friends who are also invited to the room can come and stop by whenever they want, similar to Zoom. But I think it's just like a little more fun because it's just like anyone in your Facebook sphere can come and say hi. So I think that that's really, really cool. So, and then Leslie has a really wonderful link here where she says, here's a link to daily online meditations. That's really cool. So the meditation is 15 minutes and they do a quick check-in with attendees. That's awesome, Leslie. I totally want to check that out. I've never seen that one before, so I need to screenshot that and go and do that at some point. And Jenny echoes that, yes, it's basically an open video chat room. So, I mean, the one positive in all of this ickiness right now is the fact that people are being more and more innovative in the ways that we can connect with each other. And that is why, that's why I created my podcast, because I had so many people on the Mighty. Like, I had so many of you incredible people who asked me every week to, do more consistent check-ins with you guys and to do a podcast. And so this podcast really is for you guys. And if you listen to that first episode, you'll see that I give all of you guys a shout out, because I wouldn't have created this podcast if it wasn't for, these conversations that I have with you all. So thank you again for, sharing and all of that sort of stuff. So that really, like talking about the importance of connecting with each other, that really relates to us as social creatures and how we really feel it's important to connect with others. And that we have certainly felt in this pandemic, like in the fact that we are, feeling so alone. That social aspect has certainly come to the forefront. But like, let's also talk about other things that we can do during this lockdown in order to make ourselves feel better in some way, and in order to bring some happiness and some joy into our lives, because I think that that's really important. So Cassandra asks, what is my podcast called? My podcast is called More Than You See. And yeah, you can subscribe to it on Apple Podcasts, or it's on a bunch of platforms. So if you just type in More Than You See, and here, actually, that's me. That's the logo or whatever. So if you see that is me. So also when you look at, other things, of course, that impact your mental health, not just obviously like our social environment and our interactions with people, but also, our physical environment, that makes such a huge impact on our daily mental health. And this is something that I have neglected. And it's something, because I've always felt, and let me know if you guys resonate with this, because this is definitely me. And Nancy has just chimed in and said she's struggling today, being locked up from COVID since March. Nancy, I am the same. I'm in Los Angeles, and right now we are like the COVID epicenter, and that has certainly, I haven't seen friends. I've basically stayed in my house, in my apartment since March. So I hear you, and that is really what we're talking about today is ways we can cope. And also, I just want to say that I think that one of the additional stresses is the fact that we just went through the holidays. And even though we all knew that the holidays were going to be rough, even though we knew that things were going to be different than previous years, good or, you know, either better or worse, I think that we still couldn't totally understand how much more difficult the holidays were going to be this year. Excuse me. And I think that we've obviously now gone through those holidays, so we now see just how different the holidays are. And of course, it's really hard because in some areas of the world, COVID is not as big of a deal as it is here in the US or in England and other places right now. And so that can also be really, you know, difficult. I have some family and friends in Australia, and Australia has handled, you know, this whole epidemic so well, so much better than the US or most places in the world. And it's really hard, honestly, to connect with people there right now because they just don't understand. They don't understand the stress and the pressure of going through this pandemic for 10 months. And the fact that, you know, we haven't been able to do our daily things in 10 months. The fact that I spent the holidays by myself, me and my dog, you know, and I think that it's, that is really hard. And Dawn says, you know, we don't seem to be moving forward with the lockdown. It's impacting people's mental health issues and it's heartbreaking. Yes, it is. And I completely agree with you. But I also think that it's important to recognize that, like, these are the facts right now. And it sucks so much. Believe me, I am not at all diminishing how much this sucks. But I do think that there are some things that we can do, some tools that we can use in order to, you know, work through these things. And that's what I'm, you know, working through with you guys right now is, you know, is the fact that there are some things that we can do. So like we said, you know, connecting with people through Zoom, through apps, through thinking outside the box as far as how we're connecting with people, that is certainly something that we can do in order to, you know, work through our own mental health. I also want to say, like, so your environment is hugely important on your mental health, and that has to do with your physical environment. So if you guys have watched one of my lives before, this is a completely different background than I've had previously. This is the same room that I've been in this entire time, but I've flipped things around recently because I just wanted to have a new, like, this is what I see when I work during the day. And I just wanted to bring a little more, like, happiness and positivity to my workspace because I needed it to feel better in some way. And so, you know, this new space that you guys see behind me is something that I've worked through during the holidays. Dawn says I'm spending so much time in my bedroom. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that is me too. And this room in particular, this is my, like, study, my office. And I mean, I'm in here 8-10 hours a day, and it wasn't the, like, happy feeling, like, I didn't get a happy feeling when I was in this space previously. And so I have now I've made this room now what it is because I know I can feel how much happier I am working in this space now that I have this, like, that I have this space around me. So I would strongly, you know, like, go into a room, close your eyes, and just, like, feel how that space feels. Like, when you imagine that you're in that room, how does that feel to you? And if it feels bad in some way, if it feels triggering in some way, I would recommend that you do something in order to make that space feel better. And just to be clear, I didn't buy any of this, like, all of this stuff was in other rooms of my house or other rooms of my apartment. I just, like, went and picked things up and then relocated it to this room because I knew that this room needed to have a fresh new look. So I strongly encourage you, you know, do something to, like, bring some joy into your life because it will make a huge difference. So Isaac Tovar, I'm sorry, Isaac, I don't know, how do you say your name? I apologize. Yeah, so you say you wake up with your pain in your jaw, your hands and your legs because you always have nightmares. And then also you said you have really bad anxiety attacks. You can feel how your heart shrinks inside. So anxiety is, in very basic terms, is related to our parasympathetic nervous system. And that is our body reacting to something that it feels like. When you feel like you are having an anxiety attack, it's often because your body thinks that it's in physical danger, that your body is reacting and thinking like, I need to protect my human from a saber-toothed tiger attack or something that is physically harming this person. And unfortunately, now as humans, we like in the realm in our lives now, we don't have saber-toothed tiger attacks. Like, we are at the top of the food chain, but that anxiety is still something that is innate within us. And something else that I heard the other day, which is something that just like completely blew my mind, is that humans are the only creature, we are the only animal that can have anxiety, not just from present dangers, but from future or past dangers. So if you're a bunny rabbit, if you're a deer, if you're anything else, if you're an animal, you will feel anxiety or stress, or you'll do that like fight or flight or freeze if you are actually physically in danger in that present moment. So like if you're a bunny and you see a fox and you freeze because you're afraid that fox is going to eat you, that is, again, the parasympathetic nervous system going like, oh shoot, I'm in physical mortal danger. This is how I need to react. And that's the anxiety that the bunny feels, like heart racing, pulse skyrockets, all of that sort of stuff. Now, us humans, we feel anxiety not only from what is going on in our current moment, but also what is going on potentially in the future, as well as things that have happened, previously in the past. And I'm not saying that to necessarily like, say like, oh, we have to live in the moment, because I actually don't necessarily agree with, like, I don't find it helpful to always feel like I have to live in the moment. Like, I'm a human, I'm going to feel like I'm going to remember things from the past and that's going to impact me. And I'm going to think about things in the future and that's going to impact me. So like, I don't necessarily prescribe to just like live in the moment sort of mentality, but I do think that it's very important to just recognize that we are impacted, like that our bodies can give us anxiety from future and past as well. And we're the only creature that can do that. So I just think that that's a really, interesting thing. So that being said, with our anxiety, I think it's important to remind ourselves that it was part of our, like who we are. It's part of our DNA because of that past, like who we are as creatures, and that fight or flight that was supposed to be in order to prevent us from being killed and being hunted by animals or, whatever. I think that it's really important when you have anxiety attacks to breathe, to recognize that your environment around you, that you are safe, that you are not actually in a space that is going to cause you anxiety. Or that is going to cause you some sort of, like, because I think the problem, or like the real difficulty, is when these anxiety attacks happen to us and they aren't necessarily attached to things in our current moment. They are those, future or past, or, we're thinking about other things, or sometimes anxiety attacks happen and we have no idea where they've come from. And so I think it's so, so important to really like, feel something tangible, really make sure that you're grounding yourself by feeling something tangible. Smell, like it's really important to just activate all of your senses to, again, remind yourself that you're okay. So smell something, listen to things, see what's going on, just like really use all of your senses to like ground yourself and remind yourself of who you are and where you are in the world. And then, of course, it's really important to breathe. And because what that breathing does, what meditation does, what deep breaths do when you're having anxiety is because that tells your body that you're okay and that it allows your heart rate to settle. It allows your pulse to level out. And all of those sorts of things are really important to just like remind your body that you're okay and that there's nothing that's going to harm you, and that it allows your like thinking brain to overcome your reactive brain. So your thinking brain being like, I'm okay, I'm grounded, I'm in a safe space, it's going to be okay, can override the reactive, like, oh shit, I'm freaking out right now sort of, moment. So I just think that that's really, really important to note. So Max says, I've been dealing with extreme anxiety and panic attacks for most of my life, and it's so hard to get that across to regular doctors. Yeah, I'm so sorry, Mac. I completely hear you. And I have certainly, I personally haven't experienced that sort of anxiety, but I was talking with a very good friend of mine yesterday, and she was talking about the way that her OCD manifests. And for her, it has to do with feeling like she constantly feels like people are in danger from things that either she's doing or from outside things. And she's like, it's so difficult to explain that to people because it seems crazy, because she'll say, like, oh, I see a coffee cup on someone's car. And if I don't, like, in her brain, instead of thinking like, oh, that's just someone left the coffee cup there, like, oh, well, in her brain, she's like, oh, shoot, maybe someone fainted or had a heart attack and is laying down next to that car and I didn't see him, and maybe I need to go check and make sure that there's not someone there because of that coffee cup, And so I think that it's so important to recognize, first of all, that there's, unfortunately, we are thankfully working to destigmatize mental health and to encourage people to share their experiences and all of that sort of stuff. But it's unfortunately not necessarily the case. Like there's still so much disconnect between what people think and how people feel, and actually relating that to doctors who can help in some way. And so I think that, Mac, I don't know if this is going to help you, but I think one thing that's really important to recognize, as I was like sort of saying at the start of this, and the thing that I address in this first episode of my podcast, is the fact that mental health has to do with, these 4 factors of our being. And it's so important to recognize all of those 4 factors because it's crucial in how we relate to things, how we relate to the world. And so those four factors are our biology, so your brain chemistry, your DNA, your hormones, all of the things that make up who you are on a chemical level. That, of course, impacts your mental health in a huge, huge way. And that's where, medication can be so incredibly helpful to people who have an imbalance, a specific hormone, or have a chemical imbalance in some way that can be helped by medication. So that's where, your biology comes in. Then you've got our psychology. And that has to do with how we speak to ourselves and how we relate to the world. And often that has to do with how we were taught as kids, or even, ancestral stuff, as far as like how your parents were spoken to, and therefore how they have innately, helped you think about how you feel about yourself. Like all of those sorts of things are all related to that. So biology, psychology, environment, that's what I was talking about before, as far as like our social interactions with people, as well as our physical environment, how our environment makes us feel. If you are currently in a space where it is really cold, because we're in the winter in the northern hemisphere. So if you're someplace where it's really cold, that probably is impacting your mental health because you aren't able to get outside as much, or it's darker outside. All of those sorts of things impact our mental health. And then, of course, the fact that we're all in lockdown and that we can't get that social interaction with people, that of course also impacts us. And then something that my therapist brought up the other day that I think is really, really awesome, and it's something I am going to now always include in this biopsychosocial relationship to mental health, is also spirituality. Because what she said is, our spirituality has to do with like how we relate to the world as a whole, like how we're feeling about the universe and all of those sorts of things. And whether or not you have a spirituality, even if that spirituality, like I said on the first episode of my podcast, like my spirituality for the most part is that I love being out in nature. For me, that's a huge, huge part of my spirituality. And so I think that it's just so important to address all four of those, different aspects. So Dawn says, my psychiatrist keeps increasing my medication. Dawn, I think that that's really wonderful that is something that they are working with you on, because you never know what level of medication is going to be right for you. And that's where, mental health is just so difficult, because it's not something where you can really take like a cookie cutter answer and fit it onto one person versus the other. I think that it's, like whatever works for me is not necessarily the thing that is going to work for you. And so it's exactly, that's why I created More Than You See, because I think it's so important for you to create your own mental health toolkit, for you to figure out what it is that helps you pull you out of the darkness. And that's where, my podcast, I'm going to continue going through different resources and stuff, because you just don't know what's going to be that thing that's going to help you. So first of all, Terry, thank you for checking in and saying that you just got here. Spirituality for you is about inner faith. That's wonderful. I think that's also where meditation comes in. I think that meditation and any sort of like deep breathing exercises, meditation can also be walking consciously in nature. Like for me, when I go hiking with my dog, to me, that's my meditation, more so than if I'm like, sitting in that's actually my meditation corner right there that I made. But even that, like me just walking outside is actually more of a meditation for me than even me, like, I don't know, reciting some stuff in that corner. And Dawn says, check out your page, your artist page. That's really cool, Dawn, that you're doing that. And actually, this is really wonderful. So my organization, More Than You See, something that I did last May, which I will definitely do again, is a digital art show. So Dawn, you should definitely reach out to me again as it gets closer to May, because that was something that I did last May and it did really, really well. Is that like on the More Than You See platform, I highlighted different people submitted their work as far as how it relates to mental health, mental illness, and all sorts of different, aspects. And people, submitted their artwork, and we put it up, on Instagram and on Facebook on the More Than You See page. So definitely, check that out. And I think that, going back to what we're talking about here as far as lockdown and everything, I think that the fact that you are able to, tap into your art in some way, and really dive into those aspects of your personality and how that relates to mental health. I think that's really cool. So yeah, there's the Instagram handle for More Than You See. Please come and check us out. I, share resources over there every week. I highlight a different resource, at least one. And then also, of course, my podcast is going to be there as well. So definitely Be sure to check us out there. It's me and one of my friends that runs it. So if you direct message it, that goes for me. So, and I always love to connect with people. And Rachel says, I'm writing an autobiographical musical about my experience as a teenager with agoraphobia. Very cool, Rachel. I mean, I'm an actor and a writer and a producer. So I love all of this stuff. Like, I love art. I think it's so incredibly impactful on so many levels. And I think that this lockdown has showed us more than ever how important the arts is, because we are all looking for that right now as a way to escape, as a way to sort of, get away from our current world and try and, put our attention to something else. And that's also the other reason I created this podcast, is to just give you a reminder of just the fact that I'm here for you, and I want to bring you some solace and some comfort and some happiness every Monday. So let's see. So Isaac said, spirituality is important, but not religiously talking. I don't feel that religion helps too much when you see the world in a different perspective, but I truly believe that you need to follow a faith based on yourself against what it puts on you. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's where I say spirituality. I don't say religion, because I think spirituality has to do with how you relate to the world, period. Like, that's all. For some people, that has to do with religion. That has to do with their relationship to God or Allah or Jesus or whatever. Like, there's so many, Buddha, like there's so many different religious figures. I personally think, that for me, my spirituality, I'm Jewish as a religion. I mean, that's not in quotes. I'm Jewish, period. But for me, my spirituality is really more tied to how I relate to nature, how much I love just like going out and connecting with Mother Earth. And yeah, that's a more important part of my spirituality is me connecting with the beauty of the world around me. So Matt says, this is the first time you've connected with us, and I'm so glad that this is resonating with you. So thank you so much for checking me out. And and then Mac also says, I've raised my self-sense. I was around 10 years old. I'm so afraid to tell my backstory of life to doctors. You've always been told, suck it up from the doctors. Yeah. And just battle it on your own. Yeah. Okay. So Mac, I mean, unfortunately, I'm so sorry to hear that. And I completely hear that before. I mean, I've completely heard that before. I'm curious if you have a therapist, and I'm curious if you found a therapist that you like, because I know that I've gone through several therapists in my life, and I have one now who I absolutely adore and who has really, really, really helped me. I could not say that more strongly. But I have definitely had other therapists previously who I have felt have played the blame game, or have made me feel like it was my fault in some way, or made me feel belittled, or like my feelings weren't valid, or I mean, a range of different, negative feelings around my own self-worth. And I now know how incorrect of a fit that was for me, as far as like, that was not what was going to work for me as far as a therapist. Like, I really need a therapist who is listening to me, who helps me through things, but also like really gives me that self-love, even when I don't feel that self-love myself. That was something that I knew that I needed. And I think that it's so important to find a therapist who works for you, because I compare finding a therapist like dating. Like, you got to kiss a lot of toads until you find your person. And I think that's where, really finding someone who works for you is really important. And one of the things, like on my More Than You See website, I've got like a list of questions you can ask a therapist, or like it's a blog article about like how to find a good therapist. And that's really about like making sure that therapist is a good fit for you, just as you are for them. I think that that's just really super, super important. Jonathan asks a really wonderful question here that I want to address. So, any suggestions how to deal with being pissed off about the pandemic, feeling the helplessness and wanting to play the blame game? Oh man, Jonathan, do I hear you? Yeah, I absolutely have felt that before because, like I said, I mean, I've been in lockdown pretty much since March. I have not, pretty much not left my house, and I have it was really hard over the holidays, and I saw a lot of people echo that, how hard it was to see people who were visiting family, who were breaking the rules, who were throwing parties, etc. When that's not, I didn't go and see my family because I didn't want to potentially contribute to the pandemic. So I totally understand and hear that blame game. This is what I would say to that. The only thing that we can control is how we relate, is our actions, and that's it. And to be honest, I actually created this podcast, or I thought of the idea of this podcast, or I finally decided to do this podcast in a moment of that rage, actually, Jonathan. So I find that very interesting that you brought that up, because I actually came up with the thought of this podcast on Christmas Day. I was driving to the beach here in Southern California, and there's a beach that I know of that has like no one on it. I had my dog with me, and I was just feeling like, pretty angry at the fact that like I was by myself on Christmas, even though I don't celebrate Christmas, but it's still like it's such a secular holiday of like togetherness and family and all of that sort of stuff. So I was driving to the beach, and I was, feeling frustrated. And I was like, okay, so we're probably going to be in this. I was like acknowledging and recognizing that we're probably going to be in this for another 6 months. So what can I do in order to bring me joy, in order to bring creativity to my life in some way? And that's where I came up with this podcast idea and decided to just go ahead and do it. Because also as an actor, I'm an actor, and that even more so, you have so much less control over your life, over your career, and all of those sorts of things. And so I think for me, this was one thing that I knew that I can control, was that more like creating a More Than You See podcast. And I did it because, More Than You See, my community has grown in the past 2 years since I built it. And I'm so proud of it. And I'm so amazed with everyone who follows us on Instagram and shares their stories and all that sort of stuff. And Jonathan, I know you are a very active member, and I so appreciate you for that. And I just realized that like the one thing I could control is like continuing to give back to the community in the way that I could. And that playing the blame game was not going to help at all. And it was just going to, piss myself off more, because like everyone else is not feeling those negative feelings. I'm feeling those feelings. So it was just like a really good reminder of the fact that like I can control my own actions, and that's it. And I know personally that like if I were to go and do something reckless that would then cause me to harm someone who I knew or someone who I didn't know, like I have the great fortune of the fact that I live very close to my mom. So my mom and I are in a bubble. We only see each other. And so if I did something that potentially would cause harm to my mom, that would break my heart. And I knew that that would be really, really difficult for me. So I just try not to play the blame game. and just focus on what I myself can control. So yeah, thank you, Jonathan. Thank you for asking. That was a great question. And I hope that helps. And yeah. Terry shares this. Thank you so much, Terry. I have really enjoyed you interacting with me, Terry. I've seen you a couple times on these lives, so thank you for chiming in. Terry says, I survived polio at age 3 and grew up with the aftermath. 50 plus years with polio can be a real eye-opener as to how much of that sense of entitlement creates issues for so many others. When you grew up with a disability, you have to be adaptive if you want that control. I define my disability. My disability doesn't define me. That is so incredible, Terry. Thank you so much for sharing that, and thank you so much for being so vulnerable and for, you know, sharing your story. I mean, absolutely. I think that's the thing, is that we are like I said in the beginning of this talk today, believe me, I understand that this pandemic sucks and that this stay-at-home order continuing sucks. And I have a lot of, you know, personal reasons why this is so hard on me. And they're personal things that I'm not going to share, but like, I really feel like this year in a lot of this last year in a lot of ways has like put a huge wrench in some aspects of my life. And that has been really difficult to come into terms with. But I've also realized that like, if the pandemic wasn't going on, I wouldn't have created this podcast, because I wouldn't have slowed down enough to think about what else I could offer the community. And I wouldn't have had the time, honestly, because I was always busy, running. And this pandemic has forced me to slow down and figure out how I can give back to the community in a new way. So that is to say, like, Terry, just as you said, like, you know, you define your disability, your disability doesn't define me. I've really chosen to decide that like this pandemic does not dictate my life. It dictates how I'm currently living my life, as far as like I'm ordering groceries online. I'm not seeing my friends. I'm pretty much doing all of my social interactions over Zoom. So it is forced me to interact with the world and this pandemic and my life in specific framework. But within that framework, I can do whatever I want. Like I have decided that this pandemic has given me a lot of gifts as well. And so I think that that's really, really important. So we've got a final question here, and then we're going to wrap up because we're almost to our hour. And thank you again so much, everyone, for coming on. And again, I do these every other week. So my next conversation will be on the 25th, which is at 1 p.m. right here on the Mighty. And again, I've started a mental health podcast. The first episode dropped today. I would be honored if you checked it out, rated, subscribed, you know, give me reviews, all the normal things that people say in podcasts. I appreciate it. But those podcasts will go live every Monday. And I just really am so excited to have that for you guys. So Billy asks, how do I make sure that members in my mental health group get help from professionals, during this pandemic? Great question, Billy. So of course, of course, there's so many, you know, tools out there as far as, you know, apps that provide therapy, like BetterHelp. The rest are escaping my mind right now, but that shows good marketing because I can remember theirs. So BetterHelp, you know, is an app where it has therapists on there that you can talk to. I've never used one of those, so I can't necessarily like recommend one or anything like that, but I do have friends who have checked those out and really feel like they are really valuable and really wonderful. So that's really, I think, can be very helpful. I would also say, you know, therapists right now are obviously, there's like huge waiting lines for therapists because all of us need therapy now more than ever. But there's still people, when you become a therapist, you have to do, training hours. And that's where often you can find like very discounted therapy or free. So if you go to like local schools, like local universities or colleges or whatever that have therapy programs, they will often have students who have to do clinical hours in order to get their therapy degree or whatever it's called. And so I would strongly recommend, if you're looking for a therapist and you can't find someone, or there's a long waiting list, or you can't afford it, or anything like that, like reach out to your local college and see if they have some sort of program to connect clinicians with people who need help, because they're still studying. They still need their clinical hours in order to become therapists. So that's one thing I would say. I would also say, organizations like the Mighty, organizations like NAMI and Active Minds, like there's so many incredible organizations out there that are doing way more than I could possibly do as a singular person, and they are providing clinical therapy for people right now in the pandemic. So I think that if you go to my website, I have a whole list of different organizations that have therapy or other things like that. And so I would strongly recommend that you check that out. And I will be, just so you guys know, like I'm planning on adding a ton more like international organizations on there as well, because as my community grows, I want to make sure that I'm listening to you all from all across the world. So I've got like 2 minutes left, so I just want to finish up by saying, again, thank you so much for joining me. My next conversation will be on the 25th. I do this every other week on the Mighty. It's so, wonderful to connect with you guys here. Again, I have a podcast that I just started. It's going to be every Monday. First episode dropped today. Please check it out. Please let me know what you think. Like, follow me on Instagram, follow More Than You See on Instagram, reach out to me, let me know your thoughts. Let me know if there's a specific topic you want me to discover, anything like that, or dive into. Like this, all of these platforms are for you guys. Like I absolutely love connecting with you all, and the reason I built this organization was to like give my own life purpose again. And if you listen to that first episode of my podcast, you'll hear my story. And so again, like this is for you guys. So please, reach out, rate, review, subscribe, share it with all of your family and friends if it's something you think that will resonate with them. And I'm really excited to connect with you guys again in 2 weeks. I really appreciate you all. Have a wonderful 2 weeks. Try and, find the silver lining in things. We're all in this, together. So I'm here for you. The Mighty is here for you. I will see you in 2 weeks.